Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Emily King, and I'm the program coordinator at the Advanced School Politics. Before we get started, I just want to make you aware of some of our upcoming schools. Our first school is the Campaign Leadership College, which is our most extensive school. It is a 9-day intensive for those looking to take on a senior role in political campaigns. At the same time, we'll be also be hosting the Candidate Development School. If you or someone you know is running for office, please encourage them to apply for this program. It is our only program specifically for candidates running for office, and this will be your last chance to attend this school before the end of the 2026 election cycle. Finally, we have the comprehensive fundraising training, and this is a 3-day program focused on equipping nonprofit organizations with the tools they need to succeed. Please note that all 3 of these schools are in-person only, held in the DC area. And for more details, you can go to learntowin.org. Again, that's learntowin.org. All that being said, let's get into today's lecture. We're joined by Rick Tyler, the director for the Advanced School of Politics. Rick has an extensive background in campaigns and politics. He was the press secretary for former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, and notably served as the national spokesperson for Ted Cruz's 2016 presidential campaign. Today, in addition to leading the Advanced School of Politics, you can occasionally spot him as a contributor on major news networks. So please join me in welcoming Rick Tyler.
Thank you, Emily. Good afternoon and good morning, or wherever you are. We have people from all around the world. We've got a great audience here today. These workshops have been growing and growing, and we've been so surprised. We're trying to make them as professional and useful as possible. And so today I want to talk about the role of the campaign manager. This is my background. If you don't know me, Emily just talked about some of these things. I am the author of a book called Still Right. I was an NBC News political commentator for about 10 years. I worked for Newt Gingrich's presidential campaign, and again, I was press secretary for former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. So let's talk about the campaign manager. The campaign manager is best thought of as a system architect and not the task manager, the scheduler, the day-to-day guy. He has to design a system that is going to function and operate well throughout the campaign. And this is particularly true when campaigns will inevitably reach stress points. And the architecture of the campaign is to ensure that the campaign is going well and can live through these really trying times. So yes, the campaign manager should be inspiring. They should create a morale and esprit de corps that everybody's working as a team and working together. But the design of the campaign really makes all that possible. Good feelings and good emotions and great enthusiasm, that's all terrific. But those are the first things that go out the window when you stress test a campaign. And if it's not designed correctly, it will collapse. So that's when most campaigns are going to fail, is when they hit their stress tests. And so you have to design the campaign so that everything is still going to move forward, even though the campaign comes under stress. Think of it also this way. In some campaigns I've seen, people are, worked, to death. Like they want to work people all day, all night. And that's fine, and it does feel good sometimes. It's enthusiastic. You're working on a campaign. The problem with that model is that if you max people out and stress them out, and then when the campaign hits a bump in the road and there's a crisis, there's no room for people to grow or no room for people to expend extra energy to solve that crisis. So you really want to design a campaign that is really functioning normally. People are getting enough sleep. People are mostly relaxed. People are having, enjoying their work. They're getting things done. And then when the crisis comes, you have the bandwidth to really ramp things up to solve that crisis quickly. And we're going to talk about how to design that a little bit. Now, for our international friends who work in parliamentary systems, it's a little different. The campaign here in the United States, we have a very candidate-centric model. The candidate is at the center of the campaign, but that's not true in most of the world, actually. Where in the parliamentary systems, the party is at the center of the campaign. So the role of the campaign manager is often split, what we would think of as a role, between the regional manager, someone who works for the party, and then someone who's working on maybe several different campaigns or MPs. But still, you have to make sure. The problem with having two people in charge, of course, is the other person thinks that they're doing everything. And there has to be just a tremendous amount of communications between those two people to make sure someone owns all the things that must get done. And if they don't, it just won't work. So my parliamentary friends, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Just make sure you're communicating between those two roles to make sure things get done. Okay, so the role of the campaign manager. In a campaign, you don't get to pick or specialize in the one thing you're really good at as a campaign manager, because it really just won't work in this manner. The management role really oversees 5 different areas, and all of those areas have to be covered. So it's about, management is about coverage. It's not about specializing. It's not about assigning responsibilities, and it's not about just enthusiasm. It's making sure that 5 specific areas have coverage and that they are going to work no matter what the campaign runs across. And so let's go through them. Number 1 is fundraising. Everything in a campaign is downstream of fundraising. And if a campaign has money problems, I can tell you it has more than money problems. It has a messaging problem, it has a staffing problem, and it has morale problems, because money pays for messaging and money pays for staffing, and if people don't get paid, they're very unhappy. So money is the first thing. So when I walked into the presidential campaign in 2015 for Ted Cruz, there were already people in the campaign office, and guess who they were? They were all development people. Every single one except for the campaign manager. I was really one of the first hires besides the development team. They had been there a long time. Why? Because they were raising the money to hire us all and to get all the systems in place. So the first thing that has to be done is the fundraising plan has to be implemented, and the campaign manager is in charge of making sure that that fundraising is being done. It doesn't mean the campaign manager has to raise all the money. They just have to build the systems to make sure that the money is being raised. Now, the money is raised in lots of ways. Your candidate is the number one way of which you're going to raise money. Again, this is a little different in the parliamentary systems, but in the United States, our system relies on the candidate's time and effort to raise the money, but the campaign manager has got to make sure that that is being done. There are also other systems to raise money, so text or SMS, digital advertising, direct mail, phone calls are still being used to raise money. Campaign committees are used to raise money. So a lot of different ways to raise money, but the campaign manager has to make sure that all those systems are working. So because the candidate is so integral to raising money, the candidate's call time can't be negotiated. And I will tell you, in many cases, the first person who wants to negotiate all the call time is the candidate themselves. So you got to have a really frank conversation with the candidate. Is we can make campaign fundraising very successful, but it is going to require a lot of your time and a lot of your effort, and we will make it as painless or even as fun as possible, because what could be more fun than checks coming into your bank account? So make sure that the candidate's call time, the time that you have scheduled for the candidate to make calls to major donors, is on the schedule, and that it's non-negotiable, and that it gets done. Second, cash on hand matters. It actually matters more than the total amount raised, because cash on hand is what gives you flexibility and decision-making options during the campaign. If you don't have any money, you don't have any options. And if you have money, there are lots of money, which is why late money is so expensive. Cash on hand or cash early means lots of money, it means lots of options, and it means inventories that are less expensive. So for instance, if you are buying television advertising or radio advertising late, there's not going to be much available to buy depending on the race you're in, and it's going to be very expensive. Even though candidates are guaranteed the lowest rate, it's still going to be expensive because the inventory is so limited. So the more you raise money early, the more options you have, the more flexibility you have, and therefore the more decision-making capacity your campaign will have. Systems beat heroics. Now, in a lot of campaigns, we get a lot of heroes. They come through at the last minute, and those are wonderful people, and we love them all. But that's not the system you want to build. You want to build a system that functions when there are no heroes available to save the day. So you got to build dependable, reliable fundraising processes that go on no matter what. And it shouldn't depend on whether the candidate, feels like fundraising today or he's not in the mood to do fundraising today. Because if you continue to allow that to happen, the candidate will always not be in the mood to do fundraising. But you've got to make it easy for the candidate to do fundraising, to make those calls and get it done. Car time is really the most valuable time, because if you have a driver and the candidate can make calls while they're driving, that is a very effective use of the candidate's time, as opposed to playing Candy Crush or something, or doing something on the cell phone. But making calls is the most effective time that they can have. Second, people will do what you measure. We know this in the business world, but it's also true in the political world. If we say we're going to make 100 phone calls, and people say, okay, we can make 100 phone calls, but it didn't raise any money, well, then you're measuring the wrong thing. What you want to measure is actually the thing that drives the outcome. So how much money did we raise? What is our actual fundraising goal today, or this week, or this month, or in this quarter, or in this filing period? We should know all those numbers and be driving to get them, because then the effort will match the goal, as opposed to measuring the effort, and that's where the effort stops. Oh, we made our 100 phone calls. We only raised $10, but hey, we made our 100 phone calls. The 100 phone calls really doesn't matter. It's the amount of money that you have to actually raise that is going to matter. So don't chase activity metrics. It may make people feel good, but you'll end up lying to yourself from the beginning of the campaign to the end of the campaign about what you're really achieving. So voter contact, so like doors knocked, that's one measure, but actually voters spoken to is another measure. Now, if there's nobody home and you leave some literature, that counts for something. But what really counts is being able to get in a conversation with somebody, convince them that your candidate is the right candidate, and they actually commit to vote for you, and you get their contact information. That's a high-value contact with a high-value outcome. And those are the things that you want to count. You don't want to count just simply how many doors did we knock on today, but how many connections, meaningful connections, did we make, and then we can measure the results from there. So the first is make sure the fundraising is being done. The second is make sure the political programs are happening. And here, execution, precision, and consequences are the most important. So campaigns love to talk about strategy. In fact, it's the most abundant resource that we have in the political world. There are so many strategists. There are so many people who have opinions about what we should do and when we should do it. There's no lack of that. But I can tell you, there are lots of great strategies that never got implemented, and so that's worthless. It's not the strategy is important, but unless it's executed, then there's no point in having a strategy. And it has to be. Campaigns love to talk about strategy, but voters experience voter execution. They don't know about your strategy. No one's telling them about their strategy. What they feel is when they get a piece of mail, when they see your television advertisement, when they hear your radio ad, when they go to your event, when someone comes to their door, when their neighbor talks about you, when they're talked about at work. All of those are voter experiences, but those can only happen through campaign execution and not just a strategy on paper. So if you can't explain how the votes are actually being moved, then you really don't have a strategy. You really don't have a program. You really have it says here a story, but I would really say what you have is a theory. You have a theory of how to win, but we don't have an execution process to make it happen. 2, what's worth doing is doing well. So here at the Advanced School of Politics, we try to up our game all the time. We're always trying to improve. We're always trying to be better, more effective teachers. We're always trying to make our schools as high value as possible. We're always getting feedback from our participants as well as our faculty to make it the best we can, because we care about it and we think it makes a difference. Well, your campaign is going to make a difference too. That's why people are running. So think about everything you do. How are we going to do it the most effective and to the best of our ability to make it world-class, to make it the best that we can do. So think less about the numbers and actually the quality of the contacts that we are making, because a lot of these things can backfire, what we call second-order effects. If you have a bad script and people are going to the door and reading a bad script and they're getting a negative reaction, and you don't have a way to understand get a feedback loop to say, hey boss, we're going to these doors and they really don't like the script. And if that doesn't come back to the campaign to say, well, then we need a new script, you're going to create, you're working against yourself. You're losing voters, not gaining voters. Second, an overwritten mail piece that can actually offend some voters, or it goes to the wrong target. Because non-political people, you and I are political, or you wouldn't be on this Zoom call, but non-political people who are not on the Zoom call can often be offended by overt partisan advertising, the red meat that we all like. So if we do the wrong mailers or the wrong person, that's poor execution. And so what we want to do is do our best all the time and make sure that we have standards, that we have protocols, we have processes, and we hold ourselves to account to uphold all of those standards. Okay, so we've covered fundraising, we covered execution. Now let's talk about the business. We often don't think about running a campaign or campaigns at all as a business, but they really are a business. They have an important distinction in that businesses are designed to hopefully stay in business as long as possible or in perpetuity. That's not really true of a campaign. A campaign is going to go out of business on election day. That's it. The results are in. We have a huge going out of business sale. Now, if you get elected, of course, you want to keep that political machine going. Or if you did really well, but you didn't win, you might want to keep that political machine going because there may be a second opportunity. I recently wrote an article on LinkedIn. You can catch the Friday brief on LinkedIn, and my article was called "Why the Worst Year to Run Might Be the Best Year to Run," because there are reasons to run in the worst year to position yourself for the best year. So you can check that out on LinkedIn. But a campaign is a business in that it has a payroll, it has vendors, it has bills to be paid. And all of those things need to be done and need to be done really well. There's financial compliance, and all of those things need to be handled. Now, because we work in a business where there is human error, we have to build in the bandwidth to accommodate for that. Now, that doesn't mean we don't tolerate mistakes. We expect mistakes, but we also have to react to mistakes in a systemic way to make sure that those mistakes don't keep repeating themselves. So when a mistake happens or a failure occurs, we don't all go crazy and pull our hair out like the world's on fire. We expect that to happen. And now we have a system or a process to fix those failures so they don't happen again. So build into your systems that, yes, failure is going to happen. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, which is, there is an opponent that's trying to kill your campaign. And they are going to try to create crises in your campaign. And it's the way you react to those crises that will determine whether you're going to keep going forward and gain ground or you're actually going to lose ground. So we have here an example. Finance reports described as handle later lead to a small error that snowballs into a public complaint and shifted into a narrative of incompetence. So things have to be done correctly on the business side. We have to make sure that all of our record keeping is accurate. And when it isn't, or we discover a mistake, we have to fix it right away. And we have to establish a protocol for fixing it, because what we don't want to do is have our opponent discover a mistake in our finances before we do. We want to discover those mistakes first and quickly fix them and get out ahead of it and not allow a simple clerical error to turn into financial mismanagement as characterized by the other campaigns. So these things really matter. So you'll pay a price. So everything in the campaign has a risk, and you really have to assess what are the risks and what could go wrong. Not meeting your financial compliance obligations is a huge risk, and it can really go wrong. mostly from a PR perspective, but that's why you have to be accurate and why you be proactively be fixing mistakes before they happen. And I will say this, most mistakes in a campaign, even though there's someone out trying to kill us, are actually self-inflicted. People in campaigns do things to themselves, or they do stupid things, or they don't correct mistakes. And what we have to do is build systems that accommodate for that. And we have to build reactions to those systems. So there's a protocol. When something happens, we have a protocol that we follow to correct the error. Because if we don't, then people are going to start improvising and winging it. And that's a really bad situation to be in. So from the business perspective, it should feel boring. Because if it's boring, it's working. If it feels really exciting, then probably something's wrong. So make sure the business aspect of it, like when the fundraising comes in, how are those checks processed? Who handles the money? Where does it get deposited? How does it get recorded? How does it get to the treasurer to be reported? All those processes need to be worked out. For bill paying, who do we pay? When do we pay them? In the political world, you want to keep your resources flexible as long as possible. So you want to be in constant communications with your vendor. But there are times when you'll have to call your vendor and say, I know we wanted to do a second mailing right now, but we've changed our strategy. Now, if you've already paid the vendor, he's not going to want to give that money back. He's going to want to mail that second mailing. But if you don't pay the vendor and if you don't pay him, he's not going to put it in production, first of all, so he's okay. But just keep in contact with him and say, I'll let you know on this date whether we're going to pull the trigger on this mailing, and then you got to commit to it. But you got to keep it flexible as long as possible, because in a campaign, strategies change, money's got to be shifted because something we have to respond to or react to, or something that doesn't work anymore and we're not going to do it anymore. All of those things happen in a campaign on the fly. So keep that money flexible, and that's part of having a good business plan. All right, number 4, let's execute according to the plan. Plans are a decision framework, and if we don't have an execution plan to get those things done, first of all, they're not going to get done. Second, when things do go wrong, as I mentioned just previously, you really need a protocol for the decision-making process to fix an error. And that protocol needs to be followed, and everybody in the campaign needs to understand what that protocol is, because if you don't, what will happen is everybody will get in the room and the loudest person is going to win. And that loudest person may not have the right solution. So why don't we figure out what the solution is before the crisis occurs, and we go through the protocol of how the decision made, and more importantly, who gets to make the decision. Now, what I would like to do in a campaign is make sure who gets to decide on what. And often those decisions are going to be with the campaign manager. But there are low-level decisions as a campaign manager you don't want to make, because you'd have too many decisions to make. So you want to delegate those low-level decisions to other people and let them rise to their leadership to make those decisions. But there are other decisions that has to do with the candidate's time, and have to do with the candidate's money, and has to do with the outcome of the race that should reside with the campaign manager. And some of those decisions should actually reside with the candidate themselves. So you should know with the candidate, hey, Mr. Candidate, you're my boss. How much money can I spend without getting your sign-off? And he may say, you don't need my sign-off. Okay, but I feel comfortable if this is a $10,000 decision in some campaigns, a $500 decision in another campaign, could be $1 million decision in another campaign. If you signed off on it, I would just feel like we were on the same team. So that's an important thing, is decide what amount of money, single transaction, that you really would like the candidates sign off on. Second is the candidate's time. It's best if the campaign manager, along with the scheduler, but the campaign manager is deciding how to spend the candidate's time. And so those are two. And third, the campaign manager is making lots of decisions all the time. And I'll tell you what the number one answer, if you're a campaign manager, you need to get used to saying one word, and one word a lot, and that word is no. Because people will come to you with a million ideas and they all cost a lot of money. And I'm not saying ignore all the ideas, some ideas are good. But if you don't have a plan, then you become really susceptible to saying yes to anything. If you have a plan, then it's very easy to say no because it doesn't fit into your plan. And if you keep track of your no's, you can just add up how much money your campaign is saving. So the best campaign manager understands how to say no because they're protecting the campaign's resources, and the candidate's time. So get used to saying no. If we have poor execution skills, good strategy where there are no checklists, no deadlines, and no follow-through, then the campaign is probably going to fade away because it has to have the strategy. Again, is no good unless there's a follow-up. What's the checklist to get it done? What are the deadlines? And deadlines are incredibly important. I think I have another slide on that to make sure we meet those deadlines. And then what are we following through and following up on to make sure the execution is complete and effective? So strong strategies are going to a strong strategy with no accountability is really nothing happening over time. So make sure there's a plan for execution to get things done. And again, designed for human error. That in an execution requires perfect people, then we're in the wrong business. Redesign assuming failure, and then have a process for fixing the failures and moving forward. And if you do that in advance, then when those errors come up, not everybody's going crazy. They're expecting these things to happen, and then we have a way to fix it, and we can just go about it in a very calm manner. The crisis will come. Don't worry. There's going to be plenty of excitement, but we don't need manufactured excitement. Because it leads to fatigue, more mistakes, turnover, because people don't want to be yelled at, especially volunteers. So make sure we're designing for that. A plan that isn't implemented is just optimism with better formatting. All right, so here we are on number 5. Number 5 is to keep the candidate out of trouble. And how do we do that? We protect access to the candidate, we manage the risk that the candidates are taking, and we save careers early. So the candidate is the highest risk asset of any campaign. They're the one that's out there. They're the one to be scrutinized. They're the one that are going to get quoted when they say something stupid. Most scandals are preventable because they happen when someone confuses access with trust. And what does that mean? Well, you know, this guy's been with us since the very beginning and he has this harebrained idea and we should really do it. No. Or this guy's a donor, but we haven't really properly vetted him. And, you know, he's got a lot of weird ties and I'm not sure we should get the candidate to meet with him. But he's a donor, so let's meet with him. No. We have to protect the candidate. We can't just expose the candidates to risk where we're risking association, guilt by association and a public scandal. 2, the candidate's time is the most important thing in a campaign. There's nothing more valuable than the candidate's time. The candidates, again, if you've listened to my previous lectures, really should be doing 3 things: asking for money, asking for help, and asking for votes. That's it. If they're doing anything other than those things, or what I would say is the mechanical side of the campaign, things that anybody other than the candidate can do well, the candidate does these three things well because they're the most effective at it. The candidate's going to be the most effective at asking for money, so he needs time to do that. The candidate's going to be most effective at getting more volunteers to help because he's the best person to ask people to do that. People want to work and trust the candidate. And third, people will most likely respond to and ask for a vote when it comes from the actual candidate they're voting for and not a volunteer. So those are the things that the candidate really should be doing. So we have to protect the candidate's time. So some people will say, well, you know, you're protecting the candidate's time and, you know, he's worked really hard and he should be out there. Look, managing the risk of the candidate is being loyal to the candidate, it's being loyal to the campaign. Because a candidate who gets compromised we're now in a 4-day news cycle of all bad news that is really hurting the campaign. That's not helping the campaign. Loyalty is reducing the risk to the candidate by protecting their time and protecting their associations and protecting the people who get near the candidate. So that is the campaign manager's responsibility, is to make sure that the candidate is where he's supposed to be, who he's supposed to be with, and using his time effectively. And again, saying no early will save the candidate's career, because if we say yes all the time, we're going to get overexposed, we're going to be doing things we shouldn't be doing, we're going to be wasting time, and we're going to be spending a lot of money that could be used for winning the campaign as opposed to filling up some vendor's pockets. All right. So we want to manage all this, the candidate into, so managing the campaign is managing the system. Now, it sounds like I'm advocating that the campaign manager should rule the candidate and really be a tough guy and not let the candidate do anything. That's not what I'm saying. The candidate is not a figurehead. His name, his sacred honor is on the ballot. He's given up his life. In many cases, like when you're running for Congress, he's probably given up their job, maybe a career, really putting everything on the line. So they aren't figureheads. They're the most important asset in a campaign. And so what we're trying to do is reduce the friction that the candidate experiences on the campaign trail and not the freedom of the campaign. So think of it, these constraints are better thought of as guardrails and not a cage, right? So we want to keep the candidate within the guardrails, but we don't want to put him in a cage and take away all his freedom. It may feel like that sometimes, but that's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is maximize the candidate's time, because everybody has the same amount of time from now until Election Day, and how that candidate uses their time as opposed to how the opponent uses their time is a really huge distinguishing factor between a winning campaign and a losing campaign. A campaign that wastes all their time is on the road to losing. A campaign that optimizes and maximizes all their time is on the road to winning. And what we want to do is just make sure the cookie crumbles a little bit in our direction by making sure the candidate's time is not wasted. Okay, I said I would get back to this, and so here we are. Decision-making authority is going to prevent paralysis in a campaign. There's nothing worse than ambiguity of authority in a campaign, especially under stress, where there's no clear ownership of who's supposed to make a decision. Now, I already walked you through some of the decisions, low-level decisions, mid-level decisions, and then critical decisions, which I do believe the candidate should be involved in. So someone's got to own the budget trade-off. So we have enough money to do the mail, but we don't have enough money to do a sufficient TV buy. The campaign manager's got to decide, we're not going to do a small TV buy because that's a waste of money. We're going to take that money and we're going to do a bigger mailing, or whatever the trade-off may be. But he's got to be able to make those kinds of decisions, particularly at critical moments. The campaign manager must be involved in message escalation, meaning, what issue has emerged that nobody saw on the radar, but now here it is, and we got to weigh in on it. Because guess what? Countries go to war, people get killed, disasters happen, corruption occurs, life happens, and now all of a sudden we got to respond to it. So the campaign manager's got to be really involved in, do we want to take on this issue? Do we want to respond to this issue? Do we want to react to this issue? Or we must react to this issue? Those decisions should lie with the campaign manager. The campaign manager should also have scheduling veto power. So the scheduler has decided that the candidate is going to travel 4 hours to an event on the other side of the district that's going to have like 12 people, and we just have something much better we could do with our time. And I know the scheduling manager thought that was a good idea, but it's not a good idea because it's 8 hours of car time. And unless we have fundraising calls for those whole 8 hours, that's not going to be a good use of the candidate's time. And so someone has to say no. Or sometimes there's something that comes up and we just have to cancel an event. And the campaign manager must be able to do that, to say, we can't go to that event, so sorry, handle it professionally. This is what I mean by building systems. So what happens if we have to cancel an event? Do we send a surrogate speaker? Is there somebody of some prominence who's endorsed our campaign that we could send in their stead along with our apologies? But sometimes those decisions have to be made, and they've got to reside with the campaign manager. I always say, if you don't want something done, give the decision to a committee. If you want something done, give someone ownership of it. And the campaign manager has to decide who has ownership of all the projects in a campaign, but they must have ownership of these things: the money, the time, the schedule, and the message. All right. So here are some warning signs. There's 4 of them here that you should recognize as systemic failures in the campaign that need to be addressed. It doesn't mean we're going to lose. It just means we need to fix them. The first is fundraising volatility. If you build a system to raise money, and as you know, if you worked in campaigns, the money comes late, and you're building a process, but there shouldn't be these wild fluctuations from week to week in money. Like we talked about, we're going to set a goal for today, we're going to set a goal for the week, and we're going to set a goal for the month. And for some reason, we reached our goal last month, but we missed it by a long shot this month, and now we seem to be very erratic. That's a problem. It means that there's not a systemic system for raising money, meaning mail, phone calls, text messaging, whatever it is. That should all be ongoing, and it should provide some kind of reliable source of money. Even major donors, you can make predictions of whether they're going to give or not, and you do a little formula on, what is the propensity of them to give, what is our ask for that major donor, and what do we think, what is the percentage chance you think we'll get it? And if we multiply those numbers out, we'll actually get a pretty accurate number of how much money we'll raise from major donors. If we systematize it and we do it properly and we make sure the phone calls are executed and made. So look out for fundraising volatility. If there's a lot of volatility and it's going up and down, then we need to normalize the system to make sure that we are raising steady money. That doesn't mean some days we'll have peaks, or sometimes we'll have a special program that's going to raise a lot of money at our event. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, the money was coming in and now it's not. What's wrong? Is the message wrong? Is it not being executed? Did the mail not go out on time? Do we have the wrong lists? You just got to find what is that answer. 2, normalizing missed deadlines. This is a real problem because we set deadlines, and guess what? Time passes and we miss our deadlines. But if we do this routinely, then they don't become serious, and they just become normal, and then they have really no meaning. And it really undermines momentum and accountability. It means anybody who misses the deadline will be like, oh, it's no big deal, nobody cares. People should care. We've got to make sure our deadlines, now you should have realistic deadlines, but we got to make sure we have deadlines and they're hit and they're reported on, and that someone's accountable to meeting those deadlines. Because if we don't, then we're going to confuse motion for progress. And what we want is progress and not just a lot of activity. 3, staff improvisations. And what I mean by this is people are just making it up as they go along. And team members are consistently improvising around the systems instead of following the process, indicating system failures. Now, what I don't want you to do is when staff finds a way to get something done because your bureaucratic system has kept them from doing it. In other words, they've erected barriers to keep them from being successful, and they work it around. That's an employee I want. What I want to do is fix the system. I don't want to fix the employee. I just want to fix the system so that employee can thrive in a system that he's getting things done. In my division, the Advanced School of Politics, we don't look for doors. We go through walls. Now, if there's a door available, by all means, please go through it. But if there isn't a door available, what is the way we're going to get it done? And what you want to do is keep people who are going through walls routinely, figure out, maybe move the door so they can actually get things done. So watch for staff improvisations. They're working around your bureaucratic system. Most of those people, they just want to get it done. People who are following your bureaucratic rules and getting nothing done, you also have a problem. So you've really got to fix the processes that keep people from doing their jobs, whether they're doing their jobs and not getting anything done or going around all the rules to get them done. Either way, you got a problem, you got to fix it. All right. Finally, is the candidate themselves. Yes, you candidates, you are a problem. And you're a problem because you keep bypassing the processes that we set up. And if you do that repeatedly, you're going to get yourself in trouble. And it's always, well, just this once, just this once. And just this once, you're going to end up with a picture with some donor or a picture with some guy that's going to land in the newspaper and he has really bad associations, right? Because you just this once, or you decided that you really had to speak at this one event, but there was no time and it made you late to the other fundraising event, which was more important, and you ruined your fundraising event or whatever it was. You're going to break something and you're going to ruin something. Now, a lot of times it doesn't happen and it works, but if your candidate just keeps breaking the rules and keeps making their own rules, they are going to get hurt. And the campaign manager really needs to be clear with the candidate. I'm putting up these guardrails to protect you from going off the cliff, you see. And so if you just stay within the guardrails, we'll get up and over this mountain and we'll win the race. But if you keep insisting on driving off the cliff, I can only, hire the wrecker to pull your car up or your sorry ass out of the valley so many times, right? So candidates, if you don't like the system, well, work with your campaign manager to build something that you do like. But those systems are really built to protect you. And so help us protect you. In closing, be the adult who keeps the campaign real, right? Be a reliable leader. Make sure that everybody in the campaign knows that they can come to you with problems, and keep everybody in the right direction. And when people argue, bring them in the room, get it resolved. Really show leadership. And you're a leader. You're building an architectural. You're an architect. You're building a system, and the system's got to work, which means people got to get along, and people got to be able to navigate the bureaucracy and to get things done, and everybody's got to know the rules. And if you build that system and assure everybody that that system is built for victory, that they're all going to be part of, you can really keep it going. So in summation, the campaign's manager's job is really reduced to these 7 items. First, be the architect. Design a system that survives the stress test. Build in the fact that we're working with human beings. They are going to make mistakes, and how do we fix them when they happen without being panicked? Build in a system where you're allowed to, when a crisis comes, there's capacity to meet the crisis. If you have everybody working here and the crisis happens, we're at the ceiling. We can't go any higher, right? You want people like right here working hard, but when the crisis comes, then they can maximize and deal with the crisis with a fresh mind and being rested and make good decisions. People who are tired and frustrated and fatigued make terrible decisions, and that will get you in trouble. All right, number 2, make fundraising happen. You got to make sure that all the systems that you've got to raise money, all your vehicles to raise money, are actually working and they're happening and they're hitting on time, and that they have the right message going to the right people. And as long as you keep that process going, then you should have a steady income or reliable income, and not allow all this volatility, this hit or miss, or being saved by the hero once again. We want to build systems that work despite the heroes coming through or despite the hero's failure, all right? Number 3, make sure that political programs are happening. Make sure that the door knocking is getting done, that all the voter contact, the voter direct mail is getting done. If there's phone calls, the phone calls are getting done. The endorsements are getting done. Make sure all the things that are persuading voters and voter persuasion happens by voter contact through advertising, through radio, television, mail, events, door-to-door, candidate events. All of those things have to be on track and happening, and that's your job to make them happen. Not for you to do it. Good managers don't do, they manage, right? And so make sure they're all happening. And then have a plan, implement that plan. And that will give you the ability to say no. Because if you got a plan, you believe in the plan, it doesn't mean that the plan can't change. It doesn't mean that things happen. They do. But when you have a plan, and it's a good plan, and you're following, you believe in the plan, and then when someone comes along and says, let's do another plan, you can say, no, we have a plan. And the resources, I can tell if a plan's being implemented because you open the checkbook, and if the money's going toward the plan, then the plan's being implemented. If the money's going toward something else and not the plan, then the plan is not happening, right? It's very simple. All right, number 5, run the business. The campaign have vendors, they have compliance, they have payroll, sometimes they have healthcare. They need to be run like a business. There's operations, meaning, maybe you have a driver, who's organizing the candidate from getting from one place to the other, who's doing the advance work. All that should be run in a business sense and paid attention to because, again, it's the candidate's sacred honor and fortune, their reputation. And when you run a business badly and people are talking badly about the candidate, they don't pay their bills, that's not a good thing. So we want to make sure that we've got a good business, good cash flow, we have ample money to meet our obligations, everybody gets paid, everybody's happy. Number 6, reduce the risks. Make sure we understand what the candidate's schedule is, what their time is, who they're spending time with, what events we're going to. Don't put your candidate in a place unnecessarily that creates risk for a public relations risk that will ruin your campaign in one news cycle. So we want to make sure, and again, this gets back to saying no. You can say no politely, you can say no cheerfully, but you have to say no. And make sure the candidate's credibility is protected. And again, it's by running the business well and reducing the risks. So most campaign disasters are optional, or as I said before, self-inflicted. Well-designed campaigns create their own margin for error so we can expect them and correct them. I have a minute or two here, so I want to talk about one thing, campaign managers, and maybe I'll do a whole workshop on this. But we were talking earlier, and I think it's important, is your inbox. If campaign managers' inbox can be a real problem because they don't know how to manage it. And you really need to get a hold of your inbox. So I'll just give you some quick rules to help you get organized. Because if you're looking at your inbox right now and it says 1,243 unread emails, you got a problem. So first, you should have a campaign laptop that none of your personal email goes to, that only the campaign email goes to. That will keep you focused on your job when you're doing your job as a campaign manager. It's not to say you can't have another laptop or your cell phone around, you can. But keep all your work-related campaign management emails on one laptop and don't add those other accounts to that laptop. This will keep you focused. 2, write rules, right? So recurring emails that come in that you do need to deal with, write rules so they end up in folders and manage those folders, have those folders all organized. 3, schedule time to work on those folders. And I'll give you one rule. If you open an email, execute on it. Don't scan your email. It's a complete waste of time. If you're scanning your email and you say, well, I'll get to that later, you're not going to get to it later because a whole new set of emails that you'll get to later are going to come in, and that's why you ended up with 1,243 emails that are unread. So make sure you schedule time to say, you know what, I'm going to process my email now, and I'm going to organize it, and I'm going to execute on, if I open this email, I'm going to execute on it to the degree I can. Now, sometimes that means I will get as far as I can, and then I'm going to put a reminder on it for tomorrow morning because I'm waiting for an answer or whatever it is, and then tomorrow you'll get a reminder that you need to complete that email. The important thing is, by the end of the day, believe it or not, by the end of the day, you should have 0 unread emails. I know, it's a shock, but you can do it, and I'll tell you how. First, get rid of all the stuff you just don't need to see every day. Just unsubscribe, get rid of it all. 2, have another email address where your things that you like to read go to. So like maybe a Gmail account or a Yahoo account or an Earthlink account, whatever. Just set that email up, and if you want to read what the Wall Street Journal is saying, then have all those emails, or Politico or all the other emails you get, whatever the emails you like to read, have them all go there. Here's what's wonderful about that, is in a couple days, you'll get behind on that, and you'll have a lot of unread emails in it. You can go in there and just delete them all, right? And you don't have to worry. Then have an email that's your personal email. Keep that entirely separate, and then have an email that's for your bills and other things like that. And if you do that and you keep them all separate and you schedule time and you deal with your email in an effective way and don't react to email, shut off those alarms, right? Because every time that computer or phone dings, you are working for somebody else. You're reacting to whatever that phone says you need to pay attention to now. Shut them off. Schedule your time to deal with the emails in the way you deal with them. And if somebody's wasting your time, get rid of them. You don't have time. You're going to make a lot of decisions. There's going to be a lot of incoming. And unless you organize it, you're going to get buried. And you really need to make sure that you're dealing with and prioritizing the things that are important to the campaign, and you owe it to your candidate. So I'm going to turn it back over to Emily. And are we taking questions today? Oh, well, let's take a few questions. Shout them out so I can hear you.
All right, let's see. One person asked, can a campaign manager run 2 campaigns at the same time?
Is that the question?
Yes.
Yes, except we don't call him a campaign manager at that point. We call him a consultant. No, look, in the parliamentary world, that's very common, and it's common in some places. I have a good friend in Tennessee, and he works on many campaigns, and he manages all those campaigns, in mostly House races, but sometimes town council races very effectively. And there's a lot of benefit to that because you can negotiate better prices with your vendors because you're working on lots of different campaigns. You also get to see different things that happen in different campaigns because sometimes when you're narrowly focused on one campaign and you don't realize, oh, this is happening over here, and you start to see more patterns in campaigns. The downside is you're not going to be able to give as much time and attention to one candidate as possible. So look, a larger campaign like a congressional race or a statewide race really needs, I think, to have one person kind of on the ground. I don't like the model where a campaign manager works for a consultant. I realize that that's a case in a lot of cases, and there are a lot of good consultants. I'm not anti-consultant, I'm anti-bad consultant. I think it's better if the campaign manager is in charge of the race and they can hire a consultant. There's lots of things consultants can help candidates do. But what we don't want is the consultant, the campaign manager becomes the sales rep for the consultant, and they're just selling their products in their various campaign aisles. We've got research in aisle 1, we got scripts in aisle 2, we got speech writing in aisle 3, we've got television ads in aisle 4. We don't want that, right? We want the campaign manager on the ground making the correct decisions for their candidate and having the consultant help them do that. So yes, a campaign manager can run multiple campaigns, but I would say if you're that campaign manager, just make sure you're not taking on too many campaigns, that you don't give them all what they deserve and what they're paying for. Another question?
When a candidate is first starting off, is it possible for both the candidate to be both the candidate and the campaign manager?
Okay. Of course, the answer is yes, but I don't like this answer at all. And I'll tell you why. Because the campaign manager and the candidate have very different roles in a campaign. And whenever the campaign or the candidate is playing the role of the campaign manager, they're not playing the role of the candidate. And remember what I said about the candidate has 3 jobs, and they're all message related. Ask for votes, ask for money, ask for volunteers or more help. So you get to ask for votes, help, and money, right? And if you're spending time on the mechanical side of the campaign, which is all that the campaign manager is really doing, then you're not spending time doing what you're most effective at doing. I understand there are a lot of races, smaller races, that there's not enough resources or it's too small not to hire a campaign manager. And look, I have a lot of candidates who take the campaign management school for that purpose because they want to know how to run a campaign and be the candidate. And so again, yes, it is possible. But what is better is to find somebody, either volunteer or someone you could pay something to actually manage the campaign and let them manage you so you can be your best as a candidate. That is the best model. I'm not saying it's not possible. Again, you can do it, but it's not the optimal model.
Let's see. How would a campaign manager best manage or schedule a candidate's online presence?
Wow. Okay. How would a campaign manager schedule the online presence? And do they mean their overall, I wonder if they mean their overall strategy or a session? I'm going to guess that what you mean is how do you manage their online presence? And we have done workshops on this, and we will do more in the future. I'll just say this: make sure. I actually just wrote an article again for the Friday Brief, and it says campaigns should use social media, but not be used by social media. So understand that most of our online presence, other than our website, is controlled by others, and meaning Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, any social media platform that you're using as a campaign. So rule number one, only engage in the social media vehicles or platforms that you have the bandwidth to keep up with, right? Nobody wants to go to a Facebook page that the last post was 3 months ago, because what you're saying to the voters there is, I don't really have a campaign, I'm not really paying attention, and that's not a good look. You want to have a very active page, lots of updates, right? But that means you got a bandwidth and dedication to do that. So don't take on 6 social media sites if you can only manage 2. It's better to have 2 good ones or 1 good one than it is to have 6, and then direct everybody toward that. Social media that is controlled by other people relies on an algorithm to provoke outrage. That's how people get clicks. Clicks are done by outrage, mostly. Outrage, anger, injustice, these types of things. The media companies know this, which is why if you're reacting on a social media sites as people are criticizing you, the media companies love you because you're going to get lots of clicks, and guess what? It's all negative for you. So don't do it. Make sure that when you're using social media, that you're using it for your positive messaging, and that you keep the forums and comments. You have a system to make sure that they stay positive. And if people can't stay positive, just like, if someone came into my living room and started talking smack about me and my family, I'd kick them out of my house. And that's what I would do. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, you can't do that. You can't. Well, yes, I can. I want to keep my online presence positive, have a positive message to get my vision. Now, for the online presence that you can control, you should have a domain, a very professional looking website, and a way for people to get a hold of you that is not an auto reply, or figure out if there is an auto reply that it feels to the voter like someone's actually there and someone follows up with people. There's nothing worse than having a way, oh, come volunteer in my campaign. Oh, I'd love to do that. Sounds great. I volunteer, and 3 weeks later, I've heard nothing from the campaign. That is ridiculous, right? You may as well just say, don't sign up because you're not welcome. If you have a way to sign up, make sure that those people are followed up with within 24 hours, and that you have a way, an access point, an entry point, that they can meet somebody for coffee or come to the campaign headquarters, and they have an opportunity to take on some volunteer role immediately. That takes a lot of work and organization, but in the end, if you're organizing a lot of people, a lot of work's going to get done, so it's really worth it. I hope that answers the question.
Okay.
I
Probably
think we're going to close out. So let me just say thank you for doing these workshops. I hope we have a lot of people on, and the numbers get bigger and bigger every week. And so we're always trying to keep this informative, and we value your time. So we would love to hear from you and your feedback on these workshops. We'd love to hear your ideas. What would you like a workshop to be done on? And you can write me at rtyler@leadershipinstitute.org, or just respond to the email that you got about this workshop, because we want to continue to grow it. We think it's an effective way to reach people in just an hour time every couple of weeks. And so we'll see you at the next workshop. And don't forget to visit learntowin.org. And I'm going to turn it back over to Emily. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick. I hope everyone enjoyed today's lecture. If you missed anything or would like to review any of these materials, a recording will be sent out soon. All of our workshops from our 2026 season are posted on our YouTube page, so please go check those out. And one last time, I do want to remind you all of our upcoming schools. the Campaign Leadership College, the Candidate Development School, and the Comprehensive Fundraising Training. If you're interested in any of these programs, you can scan the QR codes on the screen or go to learntowin.org for more information. And again, these are in-person events in the DC area. With that being said, thank you so much to everyone for joining us, and I hope to see everyone in a couple of weeks at our next workshop.